Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our viewers around the world. We're hosting the special edition of South Sudan Women Intellectuals Forum. We are pleased to have as our guests this evening, as per South Sudan and East Africa time, Honorable Dr. Isaiah Chol Arwai. Honorable Dr. Isaiah Chol Arwai is currently the chairperson of the National Bureau of Statistics. Before we go to our topic of discussion for today, I think it would be appropriate for me to give a brief biography on who Dr. Isaiah Cholarwai is. Dr. Isaiah was born in Tweed East County of Jonglei State. He is a career public servant who has served in various capacities both in Sudan as well as in South Sudan. He briefly served as County Commissioner of Tweed East County following the implementation of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005. He then was appointed as the chairperson of the National Bureau of Statistics, a government statistical agency. This appointment was in 2006, and it's worth noting that among the senior civil servants, he's one of the longest serving civil servants since 2006 to date, heading the same agency, that's the National Bureau of Statistics. In terms of qualification, Dr. Isaiah is a graduate of Khartoum University, Sudan, and he pursued higher studies, his doctorate from Glasgow University in Scotland in the United Kingdom. He is very passionate about statistics and in fostering strong statistical systems in South Sudan. Honorable Dr. Isaiah Cholarwai, you're most welcome to South Sudan Women's Intellectual Forum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be hosted. Maybe a little correction.
Yes.
I'm not a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's the correction I would want to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that point. Now, I would like to move back to our topic of discussion today, that is the effectiveness of the National Bureau of Statistics in the organization, leadership, and coordination of the national statistical work and the national economic accounting in South Sudan. To begin with, we would like you to please educate us. What is the National Bureau of Statistics? Give us a brief history of how it was formed, the structure, and what it does. Over to you.
Thank you very much. The National Bureau of Statistics is an executive statistical agency of the government of South Sudan, which is mandated by the Transitional Constitution 2011 and the Statistics Act 2011 to produce official statistics and provide a vital leadership and coordination role in the overall statistical production in the country. The origin of the National Bureau of Statistics dates back to 1995, when it served as a database and monitoring unit under the then Relief and Rehabilitation Association, the SRA. In 2004, it was transformed into New Sudan Center for Statistics and Evaluation, which later became South Sudan Center for Census, Statistics and Evaluation, following the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement 2005. The National Bureau of Statistics came to effect after the declaration of independence of South Sudan on the 9th of July 2011. The National Bureau of Statistics is established under Article 193(1) of the Transitional Constitution 2021 as amended, of the Republic of South Sudan as an independent statistic bureau authorized inter alia to A. Collect, compile, analyze, publish, and disseminate all official statistical information on economic, social, demographic, environmental, and general activities and conditions of the people of South Sudan. B. Conduct all carried out throughout South Sudan. C. Monitor and evaluate social impact of public policies, projects, and programs, and monitor the progress of poverty alleviation and attainment of MDGs, which is now Sustainable Development Goals. I think that is the structure is that the governing body is the board. Then you have the management with all the relevant technical departments or directorates. The board is not yet functional as we speak. So we have the management, which is headed by me and a deputy. We are the two constitutional post holders. The rest, the management, are technical staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. In addition to the head office, which is currently based in Juba, do you have any branches across the country?
Yes, we have 10 offices in the 10 state capitals. Their role is just to back up the field operations. Whenever we have field operations, they facilitate the field operations. They also support the governors, or rather the ministries at the state level, together with the commissioners at the council level. So they represent us in each of the 10 states capitals. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Out of curiosity, since the National Bureau of Statistics handles statistical issues, as women, we are very keen to know, are you observing affirmative action, and have you been able to attain 35% representation within your institution?
Yes. Before the peace agreement, the SPLM of women action was 25. So when the institution was established, 2004, there is a provision that out of 9 members of the board, 3 should be female or women for that matter. So we have it in our acts, in our law, which is roughly 33%, because we have 9 members. So we have 9 members out of 3. So we are observing it, the affirmative action, although we have not reached the 25. But we hope the revised law is before the parliament. So we hope if the revised is passed, then the issue of the remaining 2 or even more could be added. That is at the governance level. But at the technical level, of course, I think we don't consider the issue of affirmative action, because it is purely on merits and qualifications. But all in all, we still have a good number of female. Out of 100, currently out of 187, we have 45 staff that are women. The head, the finance and administration actually is being headed by a woman in our institution. And then we have a policy of encouraging the qualified women to apply whenever we put up an advertisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is quite a good number, though it still falls short of what is stipulated in the law. However, apart from the issue of affirmative action, what are the major achievements of the Commission? Can you kindly highlight those in detail?
Um, the the well, first of all, a little correction. We are a bureau. I would ask us to be prepared as a bureau instead of a commission. Uh, as I said earlier, the bureau, we came into existence in 2006, and given our mandate, or in line with our mandate, the bureau has got achieved a number of achievements. The first achievement, in my view, is the fact that we started from scratch. There was no statistical agency in South Sudan. So the fact that we established the head office with the branches in the 10 state capital, in my view, was an achievement. The fact that South Sudan has its own statistical bureau. On the issue of the mandate itself, we conducted quite a number of surveys that are nationally representative. We started in 2006 with what we call, when we were part of the Greater Sudan. So we had the first household health survey. It was done in 2006. And the idea was to get some health indicators about the whole country, but particularly South Sudan, where we were responsible for it. So we thought it was one of the achievements that we had. In 2008, we also did the population and housing census, which later on the results were used for elections and ultimately were used for referendum, leading to the separation of South Sudan. We thought that one was a big work that we had done. We also had a second Sudan Household Health Survey 2010. Again, it was trying to look at the trend of the 2006 compared to 2010. What has changed? What has improved? So there was a major survey also. Another survey was also done in 2009, and it was to establish poverty estimates in the country. To what extent did was the issue of poverty an issue, and in which area was it more pronounced? We also had a plan. Recently, in 2014, 2020, we had what we call National Strategy for the Development of Statistics in South Sudan. It was a 5-year plan. The government obtained a loan from the bank. And this loan was meant to enhance or to build the statistical capacity in the country. It just ended last June. It was a 5-year plan. So it was intended to cover most of the ministries, agencies, and departments in the country. We also had, in 2019, we conducted what we call Integrated Business Establishment Survey. We had just wanted to have a general idea about the businesses that are in the country and the impact of the conflict on business itself. To what extent did the conflict which erupted 2013 affect the business operation? So it was quite a big survey that we had. We had established what we call geographical geospatial department, which is responsible for producing maps. So somehow, as we speak, we are the main organ in the country that produces the maps for the ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as for the UN and NGOs. We also did, in 2014, we also did a participatory mapping involving various communities, trying to see, look at the gaps in terms of service delivery. Where are they? We go and sit with the communities and have a roadmap in terms of what is it that they lack and what is it that they have in terms of services. So it was a participatory work with the community, at least gauge what services are there, what services are missing. It was a long-term kind of an intervention. Apart from that, we have some regular statistical production that we do. One of the regular production we have is what we call the gross domestic product, the GDP. We started in 2008. And of course, a GDP, by definition, is a monetary value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country borders in a specific time period. So the importance of GDP is usually calculated on an annual basis or on a quarterly basis. GDP is an important measure that indicates whether an economy is expanding or is contracting. So for a country, you must have to have a GDP. And that is where even the membership of South Sudan in the IMF and the World Bank was based. Without it, it is difficult to gain membership in these financial institutions. So that is what we do normally in every year. It's a routine kind of an activity by the Department of Economic Statistics. Then we call it CPI. This is the Consumer Price Index, which is an economic indicator used for measuring inflation, which is the price change in goods and services, and it is normally done month to month or year to year. And it targets goods and services consumed by households in South Sudan. It is also an important tool to measure both development of the economy and welfare of the households. So we started with 3 towns. We started collecting in 2007. Wow. But when the conflict erupted, the collection in Manakal was affected. So we started not confused. We normally confused. We were not collecting it directly from Manakal. But we realized that having only 3 towns, South Sudan may not reflect the reality of the economy. So we have added now another 7 major towns. So as we speak, we are collecting the monthly prices in the 10 states of South Sudan, capitals. Apart from the CPI and the GDP, we also collect what we call administrative records from the line ministries, departments, agencies for publication of what we call the statistical yearbook, which is a summary of all that the government has been does in a particular year. This is also routine. We do it yearly. The new project is also we collect data and analysis of a quarterly integrated phase classification of food security, guiding the situation of South Sudan. This is about humanitarian work, and we are not doing it alone. There are so many stakeholders, the UN agencies like World Food, FAO, and UNICEF. There is element of nutrition. So So for us, instead of every agency does the assessment with each school, or bringing together the food security agencies to do the analysis, and it is headed by the government, and it is shared by somebody, a focal point person, and in the Ministry of Agriculture. We normally do a quarterly release of the outcome of this analysis. It informs where nutrition is, where there is a humanitarian crisis, and so on. So it's an important tool that is being used to address the issue of humanitarian needs. Currently, because the information that we have during the war, we have not been able to conduct even the surveys that are normally supposed to be done because of so the only reliable data we have is that of 2008. This data is outdated. It's no longer relevant in the current situation, given the fact that there has been a lot of demographic movement of the people from one place. Many people have been displaced externally. We have internal displacement. So some areas are, more people have moved to the towns and so on. Now, with the peace now, you need to have proper, reliable data that will help you now to provide services to the people, or will enable you now to serve or to respond to humanitarian crisis. That correct, reliable data is not with us. So we have decided as a government to conduct what we call Population Estimation Survey 2021. So as we speak now, we are in preparation to implement this particular survey to give us some data that will be used to intervene in various areas for planning or even for monitoring or policy formulation. So this one is being implemented and is one of the activities that the government in general is engaged in. I think on the issue of those are issues to do with the activities generally, but in terms of relationship, I think the Bureau has made substantial has built on the issue of relationship with the UN agencies, the NGOs, the partners, and we think that this is an important area where I think the Bureau has succeeded, because as we speak, we get support from some of the UN because we have established working relationship with them. And also as far as some of the regional entities and even global, we work with the East African community. They have a section of statistics and they are training our personnel up to the level of masters. As we speak, we have about four officers who are being trained by East African community. We have the AU Statistical Division working with us. We have IGAD Secretariat. We have the economic community, the economic Commission for Africa is also working with us. And above all, you have the UN Statistical Commission based in New York. These are institutions that are cooperating with us and they are assisting us in the area of statistical development. So we think that this is through our collaboration and cooperation in this area. I think those are some of the few areas that we have been engaged in, just some highlights. But in terms of providing support to the line ministries, whoever needs data, because that is our role. We normally provide. So the issue of cooperation with the UN, with development partners, has been an important area of operation in terms of the National Bureau of Statistics. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable, for the elaborate explanation on your role, the statistics, and the various surveys that you have been conducting over the years, and the commendable work you have been doing, working both with the national institutions as well as with partners. From what you have presented, I can deduce that it's crucial to have national statistics to provide comprehensive and detailed data on demographic, social, and economic characteristics. And it's obvious that you have done a lot of work, you and your team. However, just to take a question from a member of our audience, is to what extent does the government value statistical data for evidence-based decision in all the thematic subjects or the areas that it works in? Do the government institutions take the statistics you provide to guide them as they work on plans for the country? Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important question. Um, the idea of using evidence-based policies is key in rendering the services. But in our situation, there's a commitment. There's a commitment on the part of the government. And this commitment can be reflected in the decision, in the resolution that was made before even independence. The then Council of Ministers before the independence, shortly, 2011, made a resolution to all the government institutions to establish a statistics unit and provide them with the necessary resources. That was, you have disappeared. Hello? Francis? Francis?
Yes.
I think he has disappeared.
Apologies, I think my network
Yeah.
went off briefly, but I'm back now.
Thank you. I was saying that there's a commitment to use statistics, but there's always a gap in terms of the available statistics, because most of the institutions are yet to establish the statistics unit in their respective institutions. So the use of statistics is there, particularly the Ministry of Finance. They use statistics when it comes to the issue of allocating resources. So I would say yes, partly, but there is a challenge in terms of credible, reliable data available at the disposal of all the institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the issue of population census, I do have a number of questions I would like to pose. And it's basically in the role that the National Bureau of Statistics plays in determining constituencies, how representatives are identified from different parts of the country. And my concern comes from the fact that it is nearly 9 years and we are still operating on the rush census that was held during the referendum. Does Our nation use our current population size to determine revenue allocation, the number of local government council areas, and also determine political representations of the state. My concern stems also from the arrangements which are currently linked to the various peace agreements that are signed. For example, our national parliament has been changing in size from time to time. Do they really rely on the statistical data showing representation of different parts of the country, or is it based on brokered agreements between the different parties? Over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, as I said earlier, the figures we have in terms of population and characteristics are figures of 2008 population and housing census. Those figures were used for elections, drawing the electoral consistencies in 2010. Now, from 2008 up to now, we have not had any census. We had planned to conduct a census as soon as we had independence, and we were directed to prepare, which we did. But because of the incidents of December 13, everything was halted, and the country was at war. And hence, we could not conduct any census up to date. What is happening now in terms of the consistency, the people who are in the parliament, these are politically determined figures, agree as per the agreement. Initially, the parliament had only about 370 something those days. But now, the would-be parliament is 550. That is not based on any population figure. It's based on the 2018 agreement. So most of the figures that are used now are not based on any population figures, but these are based on the political agreements which are reached from time to time. So yes, the distribution of resources, of course, ideally, we are supposed to make a population projection based on the 2008. So if you look at the population of South Sudan now, according to our figures, we have 13.6 million people in South Sudan. That's the projection. And the projection is also based on the migration. These are the elements that enable you to predict the population. You have the migration, you have the death rate, you have the birth rate. These are the three factors that you use to project your population. So the projected figures are there, and they could be used for reallocation of resources, distribution of resources. But it will be difficult to use them for elections because many people are no longer in their usual places where they used to stay. You are aware that we have a population, we are said to have a population of about 4 million people outside the country. In Uganda, in Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, and so forth. You have a huge number of people who are there. And these people are part of the population that we have already projected. So the projected figures and the actual population are two different things as we speak. But on the political side, in terms of creating or delineating the consistencies, it has not been done. We have people who were elected in 2010, and the parliament has been extended from time to time without necessarily involving any elections or whatever it is. The same with the issue of local administrative units. Most of the units, there is 2009 Local Government Act, which provides a criteria as to how a county or a Buma or a Payam could be established or be created. There's a provision. But in most cases, some of the administrative units are not based on the law itself, are politically determined. So you realize that we have a number of Payams which are not based on the law itself. So there is a discrepancy between the law and the actual practice which is happening. Because let's say, for instance, in a Payam, you need to have at least a population of 25,000 people. You go down now to some of the Payams, you'll find that the Payam, they maybe not have 10,000, and they are called Payam. But the law says 25. A Buma minimum of 5,000. Those are the legally provided figures. But I think they are not being used. Political consideration is given to some of the laws. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to take a question from a member of the audience. Mr. Paul Babao is asking, what was the reason Southern Sudan government by then rejected the 2008 population census results?
Thank you. I think there were quite a number of reasons. First of all, the 2008 census was politically charged. It came as a part of the 2005 agreement that the power sharing and the wealth sharing would be based on the outcome of the census. And so, in the north and in the south, people were eyeing the issue of numbers. You get less, you have a problem. You don't get the share you wanted. So everybody wanted big population in order to gain power or more wealth. So it was a unique census that was politically charged. So the reasons that were given are so many. One, South Sudanese by then, most of them were in the north. They were not repatriated in the north and in other neighboring countries. And the government of national unity at the time was expected to expedite the process of repatriation. That process did not take off as expected. You had a number of South Sudanese who were still in the north. And because the method we were using for counting was what we call the de jure, the de facto count. And therefore, South Sudanese in the north were counted as part of the population in the north. Because there was a delay of people not being repatriated. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason was simply we suspected that there were two. We were operating in one government. I mean, one nation, two governments. So the population figures of the north, to some extent, we suspect that they were not. They were doctored. They were manipulated for two reasons. One, the population of Darfur was more or less like the one of South Sudan, was 7.5 million. And in Darfur, there was a war. It was raging, and there was displacement. So there's no way the population of Darfur would be 7.5, while the one of South Sudan was 8.3. So we had observation about the figures of Darfur. The second point which we also raised was In the north, they have nomads, cattle, whatever, herders. The population increased from the one of 1993 by 324%, meaning people move from the towns to the villages or to the rural council or to the rural area, I mean. Then our argument was, how come? Normally the trend is the rural urban migration. People move from the village or the rural area to the village. It is not unusual for people to move from the town to the villages. So there must be a problem with these figures. We question it. The number of South Sudanese also was another factor. Previously, we were told that the population of South Sudanese in the north was ranging between 1 million to 1.5 million. But the actual people who were later on counted were only 500,000. So we were questioning what happened to South Sudanese. Where are they? They have not come to the source. The figure that came to the source was known. So it means Southerners were not counted in the north. So these were some of the factors that we raised as a technical team. And we briefed our people that the figures of the north are not sincere. There are issues that we are questioning. So based on our technical reports, the government acted that the figures of the census, the outcome of census was rejected because they would not be used for power and wealth sharing. That was the reason that they were rejected. But they accepted that they would be used for planning purposes. So there were two resolutions. One resolution rejecting the whole idea of the figures, of the census figures, because South knew that these were going to be used for wealth and power sharing. So they had to refuse them. That's why I was saying they were politically charged. But for planning purposes, there was another resolution that let us accept them to be used for planning purposes. So we had two resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Still on the subject of census and elections, we all know that the peace agreement signed in 2018 is supposed to culminate in a general election to be held. However, a precondition for that is for a census to be held before the elections are actually held. Are there any preparations in place now for the NBS to initiate the process of conducting the census?
Thank you. At the beginning, I made this. I stated that as soon as or before the independence of South Sudan, we were directed to start the preparation for the census, which we did. So in terms of the paperwork, we had done much, to the extent we even finished with the tools, with the census documents. We even tested a new technology because we want to migrate from the paper to the computer so that it reduces the cost. We had done all those things, but suddenly the conflict or the war broke out in 2013. So everything was suspended. Now we still have all those plans, only that we need to be directed, because conducting a census is a political decision. It's not a technical decision. It's the political leadership to tell you, move, conduct a census, because the president of the country is the one to make a statement that a census has to be conducted. So as we speak, yes, in chapter 1, population and housing census is one of the activities that the government of national unity is expected to carry out. But if you read closely the agreement, you go back to the matrix, you will not even get the timeline for the census. It doesn't talk about it. But at the beginning, it talks about the census. But as you move to the implementation modality, there is no talk about the census. But however, we are still on our side. We are prepared technically. We have most of the documents that we can only revise, but we need guidance, directions from the political leadership, what to do. So we are waiting to be directed. But on our side, I think we are ready, provided that because the direction to conduct a census goes with the issue of availing the resources. Because if you do not have sufficient resources to conduct a census, then you may not move anywhere. And given the current economic crisis in the country, I do not know how much we can go. The government would go for it. So we are waiting. As a bill, we are ready, but we need political direction from the political leadership.
Thank you. Before I follow on the issue of possible financial challenges that the National Bureau of Statistics is facing, I would like to ask a question from Mr. Charles Ifau, who said the following. How many tribes do we have in South Sudan? And when was the current number that was presented given out? If so, if so compiled, what makes other tribes to not be included in the compilation? This is a question from Mr. Charles Ifau Itahi. Over
Thanks,
to you.
Charles. Interestingly enough, the issue of tribes, the number, is a controversial issue. First of all, you need to define what a tribe is. Are we talking of tribes, or are we talking of ethnicities, or are we talking of nationalities? Now, Sudan had not South Sudan, had 5 censuses, starting from 1955, 56, 55, 55, 56. Up to 2008, there were 5. The first census, which was 1955, 56, they asked the question of tribes. But I think they were not able to analyze tribes as such, but they went in to analyze ethnicities. Because tribes were so many, almost over 600 in Sudan. So they went to group these tribes into ethnicities of about 9. Actually, there were 8. And then they add 1. There are people they call assimilados. This is the Malagaya. So they were added to make it 9. For South Sudan, currently, I remember I wrote some years back, because people who consider themselves tribe, if you ask them, we have not done a census asking that question. But from other sources, people talk of 63, 64, 62. I tried to compile, and I published it, and I invited people to either add or reduce, but none. I think I did not receive any response. I'm saying the issue of tribe is controversial because, let's say, for instance, Atwot is a part of Dinka, but they consider themselves as a tribe. Are they a tribe? That's where the issue is. But for me, talking about the question, what I know now, if you take whatever the people are identifying themselves, I would say 62, sorry. 62, it is subject to any amendment if you are to do a new census. But from all the sources I have come, I know it is 62, but others are putting it 63, 64. I don't know where they get the source. Now, the question of compiling why other tribes are not, it is through census. You see, in the census, there are what they call core questions that are internationally there. But there are optional questions that the government of the day can decide to include for whatever reasons if they want. Because any question you ask in the census must have a purpose as to why you want it. Why do you want that information? So for instance, if we want to know our tribe's letter, then we may include that question in our questionnaires, and that is where we may get an accurate information. But the question is, what are you going to do with it? What will the government do with that question? The same thing with religion. These are optional questions. Religion is ethnicity, tribes, depending on the decision of the government and the people. So if we go in later on and there is a need for it to know it, because these are very sensitive, and that's why they are normally not included. The issue of religion, although it is not sensitive in the context of South Sudan, the issue of ethnicity, because the people will say, okay, we are here not represented in the government, we are not represented here, our numbers are supposed to be that and that. So these are questions normally not covered unless there is a need that the government has made a decision that they would want to get data on such information. So they still remain controversial as we speak. We do not have accurate information because we have not done any proper census regarding the tribes in South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for responding to the question from a member of our audience. Now, to go back to the issue of financing your activities. We all know that our country is currently under a major financial crisis and resources are very limited. However, considering the importance of the work being done by NBS, how are you able to continue working, or who are your main donors supporting the activities that you do?
Thank you. Indeed, I agree with you that the government is expected to invest in statistics because there's very little that the government can do without the figures, whether it is for development planning or for monitoring of programs, whatever. So it's the role of the government to finance or to resource the statistics agency. But unfortunately, in our case, even before the economic crisis, the role of the government has been the support of the staff in terms of self-paying the salaries and paying operating costs, issue to do with operating costs to some extent. That has been the role of the government in most cases, even before the crisis. Programs in terms of, because a statistical agency is supposed to have a budget for statistics, for generation of statistics. That will enable you to do the surveys in most cases. But unfortunately, the budget we used to get those days, even when the economy was not that bad, was for salaries, operating costs. But at that time, we had quite a number of development partners and the UN agencies that were interested in helping South Sudan developing its statistical system. So we had like DFID at the time, they used to support our some of the surveys. We had Norway Statistics Norway, who used also to work with us, provide the technical support and even financial support. Now, those sources, after the crisis, I think most of those sources, the development partners stopped financing the Bureau for whatever reason, political or whatever. Now, we now were left with some of the UN agencies, like United Nations Population Fund, has been supporting us up to today. It is still providing us with the operating costs. I mean, issue to do with funding like electricity, like internet connectivity, things that enable us to do the job. UNDP, United Nations Development Program, is also supporting us. So as we speak, the UN agencies I have just mentioned, mostly two of them, are the one providing us with the necessary support. The government, of course, has its own difficulties. It's not only with the Bureau. So the Bureau is not given any preferential treatment. We are treated like any other government institution. And therefore, the resources that are coming from the government are meant only for salaries and a little operating cost. So in that area, some of the development partners tend to decide the type of data that they would want to collect. Let's say World Bank would say, okay, we want to do high frequency survey for their own good. So there are times we do the surveys, but dictated by either the donors or the UN agencies. So you'll get that the needs of doing that census, of doing that survey, are not necessarily coinciding with the interests of the government. So being dictated or driven by external actors gives us a disadvantage in terms of controlling the data that we are supposed to collect. So yes, we are getting some support from those agencies I have just mentioned. The government is providing the salaries to the staff and a little salary, operating costs like any other government unit. So we are treated like any other government institution. There is no special treatment for statistical agency. And that's where we have a problem. Because we are equalized with the rest. Given the nature of our work, sometimes we may not be able to deliver on our mandate effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's true that the National Bureau of Statistics is a very critical institution that can make a big difference in how our government proceeds. And that brings me to another question, which is linked to the strategic development or developmental plans of the country. I remember in 2010, when work was being done for the South Sudan Development Plan, a lot of the statistics the government relied on while formulating the South Sudan Development Plan originated from the work done by the National Bureau of Statistics. Now that that period is over, we would like to know, are there any efforts towards developing a strategic development plan for our country? We have had Vision 2040 that has been a draft, and South Sudan Development Plan, unfortunately, was never fully implemented as a result of the outbreak of hostilities in 2013. But now that we are at peace, And your bureau does have a very valuable asset in terms of information and statistics that can form the foundation for a new development plan. What is the government doing towards setting up a new South Sudan development plan?
Thank you. I think it's a relevant question and important at the same time. In terms of decision making, uh, the policies are to be set by, by the government, not necessarily through the bureau, and particularly the Ministry of Finance and Planning, or the Planning Department for that matter. And the objectives are actually set by the government of the day. Our role as a bureau, as per our mandate, is the issue of providing the required data. And I think the government is thinking aloud in terms of, I mentioned before that as we speak, we are undergoing what we call population estimation survey. This is a mini census. It's not a full census, but a mini census that is intended to generate sufficient information that the government can use in the interim period, because as we speak, you were referring to the question of census before. It's not certain when. So when you are not sure of the census, when it will be conducted, then you need to have some figures in between. So this program of the population estimation survey that we are going to implement, I believe will generate data, and the government will be in a position of using it for a strategic plan. So I tend to think that the government has already started to think aloud in terms of what it's going to do next, given the fact that peace is sustained or is maintained. So through this survey, I believe this survey will provide sufficient data that the ministry concerned can be able, or the government can be able to make use of it, whatever they want to do, a strategic plan, operational plan, whatever. So I would tend to think that the government is in the right direction in terms of supporting this exercise, which is ongoing as we speak. Thank you. I think we are not.
Sorry. Thank you. I was muted. I would like to divert our conversation now to another section of South Sudanese who have been doing commendable work, especially in the area of research. We have a number of think tanks that have been doing research, and I just wanted to know, is there any close relation between NBS and these groups? And do you use the information they generate oftentimes?
Thank you. I think we have quite, yes, I agree, we have quite a number of think tanks in South Sudan. But you remember, our role is to produce official statistics. Most of the work of the think tank are research in nature. They do the research. But the research data is different from the official statistics in most cases. We can get the data, and then they go and use it in furthering the research. So the research information, we are supposed to cooperate, yes, that is true, because there are areas where we have got a problem. They can go and make further in-depth analysis of whatever the problem is. Let's say, for instance, in some areas when we were doing the poverty estimate, there are some areas where the level of poverty, Francis, is moving away, or the delivery is left. You have come back. Okay, he's back. But the voice is not there.
Yeah, my power had gone low. I needed to plug in.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, fine. So we'll say, uh, the relationship between the think tank and the statistics bureau is not very effective as we speak. It's not very strong because they can get from us, but whatever we get from them is actually a refined information that should go to the policymakers in other institutions. But we can ask them to help us in doing the analysis of some cases. But as we speak, we have not really strengthened that or deepened that relationship. It's there, but it's not very strong.
Okay. Okay, now the issue of resources has been a very controversial issue, and following the recent release of the Auditor General's report, there's a lot of interest in knowing more on how resources are distributed in the country. So, of interest for South Sudanese is, and this is a question raised by a member of our audience, Mr. Paul Baba. What data has the government of South Sudan been using in the distribution of resources for the past 10 years? Do they go back to NBS to get the data before resources are distributed, or is there another formula that is used for distribution of resources?
Thank you. This is key. It's one of the reasons why you need to have a reliable data. Because there has to be a criteria of serving our people. And there's no other way rather than the population figures. That's true. But we have the figures. As I mentioned earlier, the population figures from 2008 are with the relevant institutions. The projected figures that we also did are also with the relevant institutions. The decision of how the resources are to be distributed does not lie with the Bureau. But the Bureau provides the data. It is up to the decision makers whether to make use of that available information or they have their own other criteria. We don't get into it again. But our role is we avail the information to help whoever would be in need of it. So the issue of criteria, what type of resources are we talking about? Money? Are we talking of hospitals? Are we talking of the schools? These are decisions made by various institutions in their own competencies. It's not within our competence. But we avail them. Every institution, because our data or our statistics is available to everybody, even the public are supposed to access it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you share with us what are some of the challenges that are facing the National Bureau of Statistics in imparting its mandate?
Thank you. I think the challenges can be divided into two. There could be external factors and internal factors to the Bureau. So, external factors, some of the key ones are issues to do with insecurity and stability. For us, collect data, there has to be peace in the country so that we are able to assess the entire country. And it is also the safety and security of the people who go for collection. And if there are displacement also of people, where will you get information? So the challenge is the security, the safety, the stability, peace is a serious challenge to our work. That is an external one. The second external is the issue of resources itself. Because the government or the ministry will have to give us the budget to enable us to do the job. Or our development partners, if they are ready to assist us either technically or financially, it's not within our capacity to compel them to do whatever they want to give to us. So those are the key external challenges, in my view. Now, when it comes to internal, for us, one of the biggest problems is the issue of staff turnover. You train people now, they become efficient, and they become marketable outside. So we have high staff turnover where we train so many, and they become attractive outside. They go to other greener pastures. Connected with it is the issue of pay, because if you are paying them less, and even irregularly, then they will not be able to do the work properly. The other challenge is where we are housed, office accommodation. It's not decent. It is not conducive for our working environment. We are housed in some modified containers, prefabs, and so on. And sometimes the security of the sensitive equipment we have, we are always rated by thugs or vulgars. So that's the challenge we also have, because for a statistics unit or agency must have a decent building. We are faced with the same problem like any other institution, the issue of power, the issue of internet connectivity in the country, because our work is all about, like now I am in a cross. I'm supposed to be in my office, and I don't have power. I don't have internet connectivity, and it becomes difficult. That's why I'm here in this office now, or maybe you may not know. So the question of, those are some of the internal challenges that are facing our work. I have talked about we have. You need to have a budget that will enable you to conduct census when you feel like instigating something or investigating something. The other external factor, which I thought I have not forgot to mention, we are not the only producers of statistics, neither are we the users. So most of the 9 ministries, they are producers of statistics as well as users. Let's say Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Public Service, all these 9 ministries, finance, they produce statistics, what we call administrative records. And when they give to us in form of a data, we now come and do the analysis and we return to them in form of statistics. If that process is not properly coordinated, then you have a problem. So we have a problem of data sharing. Sharing the data with some of our institutions is not easy. Sharing the data with the producers and users of statistics and data is an issue, because there are institutions that keep the statistics unto them or data under the pretext that this is confidential. They don't want to release it. And if they don't want to release it, then we will have no access to get that type of information, since we are not the only producers of statistics. So who will be deprived from having access to that information. And they themselves, at the end of the day, don't get what they are supposed to. So that link, where we are supposed to work together cooperatively, sometimes is wanting. It's not effective. So the issue of communication, the issue of collaboration with the other producers and users of statistics is a challenge. It's a challenge that faces us. So those are some of the key challenges that I want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Another area that has really caught our interest is on the issue of the expatriate workforce in South Sudan. Does the National Bureau of Statistics provide data on the number of expatriates, their distribution and characteristic, especially the ones working, or are we depending on estimates? What is the number of foreigners working currently in South Sudan? And what is their distribution?
Thank you. I think I will need to refer you back to the same point I've just talked about. Every government institution has its jurisdiction, has its competence. Now, if you talk of expatriates, when they come, it's the Ministry of Interior, the Department, Directorate of Migration, Nationality, Passports, and whatever. These are the people who do the recording for those going out and those who are coming in. That is their responsibility. Now, for those who are seeking permits or work permit or whatever, is the Ministry of Labor. Now, I'm sure one time you were there. The Ministry of Labor to register in terms of their nationalities and in terms of what they are coming to do in South Sudan. And again, maybe if they are businesses, then it is the Ministry of Justice. It's the Department of Registration that provides certificates. Now, with those activities, what we need from them is the information that they have registered. It's brought to us for analysis. This is exactly what I was saying, that if the sharing of data is not effective, then it affects the work of the Bureau. If we are not getting this type of information, which is in most cases now the case. Like migration now, most of the information is going first to IOM, Duration of Migration, before it comes to us. So it's a process for us now to go to IOM instead of going to our department. Because the reason is the IOM is the one supporting the Department of Migration. So they have that closer link where the information first goes to IOM, which is not supposed to be the case. It should be the other way around. So what you are asking is true, but it is not within the jurisdiction or the competence of the Bureau to compile this data if it is not availed by the relevant institutions. So I'm sorry, I do not have a figure for that. But we have initiated the process now, and I was talking about a project that we are implementing. So we are collecting data from sources for compilation. But as of now, we do not have it readily available.
Thank you, Honorable. We're having a very lively discussion going on currently on our Facebook page, and it takes us back to the issue of tribe and ethnicity. There's a lot of discussion back and forth between our viewers, and I have been requested to kindly request you to please distinguish between a tribe and an ethnicity or an ethnic group. So could you please kindly help us clarify this point?
Thank you. This is a very tricky area. It will require an anthropologist. Unfortunately, I'm not an anthropologist. But what I know is when we talk of ethnicity, of course, in English, you know what it is. But in this context, let's say the Nilotics, there are so many tribes in it. But you call them, they could be considered as an ethnic group. So if you group South Sudan maybe into about 5 or 4 ethnic groups, the Nilotic, the Semitic, the Sudanic, the Bantus, those are ethnic groups. And within the ethnic groups, you have a number of tribes. So ethnicity is bigger than, ethnic groups are bigger than the tribe. The tribe are small group within the ethnic group, people who have common features, not necessarily, sometimes the language may be akin, language may be similar. Take for instance, what we used those days to call the Bari speaking group. You have the Mundari, you have the Bari, you have the Pajulu, you have the Nyangwara, you have the Kakwa, you have the Kuku. But now you call them, these are tribes. Each is a tribe. But if you add them together, they become now an ethnic group. That's what I can say about it. But the best definition is from the anthropologist, not from Isaiah.
Thank you, Honorable. I think the debate will continue, and hopefully, we could one day host an anthropologist to help clarify this point further for us.
That would be great.
Yes, thank you so much. So, having gone through a vast range of questions, we would like to hear some of your recommendations on the way forward. What would you recommend as possible things that could be done to help you impart your mandate, and any other words of wisdom that you would like to impart to all of us, your viewers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the best would be a general remark for all of us as South Sudanese. We need to maintain peace, because whatever we are talking of is underpinned by the prevalence of peace and security in our country. There can be no development without peace. So peace, security are paramount for our work, for our development, for our people to come back. We are talking of population figures when most of our people are outside the country. They cannot come without peace. Whatever survey we do, census we do, and our people are not at home, it won't serve the purpose. So it's a commitment that we have to commit ourselves to the idea of entertaining peace or attaining peace in our country. I think that's number one. Number two, in terms of an internal factors, we as a bureau, we would expect the government and our development partners to support the activities of the bureau in terms of financial and technical and material support. Because as we speak now, we are going to conduct a population estimation survey using the tablets. And these tablets, they need money. But if you get in-kind support, like you might have had, the Kenyan government has offered us about 600 tablets, but they are not yet with us. That kind of social dialogue, cooperation, can be brought home. So the institutions that are available in South Sudan, if they can see the importance of having credible data within the country, that would go a long way. The issue of taking care of the statisticians, motivating them to do their work, is also an important component. Improving the cooperation and coordination with the Bureau, that is in terms of line ministries, development partners, UN, because outside there, you will find that data is being, or statistics is being produced, and it contradicts with whatever if we don't coordinate together, then it becomes a bit controversial. The Bureau is supposed to endorse official figures that the country can use, instead of every individual or every institution comes up with its own statistics. It can be a source of confusion. So investing in statistics by the government is paramount. It helps a lot in terms of serving our people, because having accurate data will enable us now to serve our people in an equitable manner. So I wanted to say there are challenges that I have just enumerated before. It's only the government to recognize the importance of census, of statistics, and to develop it so that we are able to serve the people in various capacities. So I wanted to thank you very much for having raised a concern, and I hope some of the questions that we might have not satisfactorily answered will be answered at another time. So thank you very much for your time and having me for this important encounter. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Isaiah, for the time you took to be with us and to explain the work National Bureau of Statistics has been doing in South Sudan over the past 2 decades. We appreciate the knowledge that you have been able to share with all of us, and I'm sure as we leave our show today, we leave having learned a lot about what is available there, and I'm sure a lot of people would be able to access more data and information from the publications done by NBS. With this, I believe we have come to the end of our show for today. We thank you for being with us, and I thank our audience for taking the time to also tune in and listen to our special edition with Honorable Isaiah Cholarway. My apologies for the wrong introduction, and hopefully our audiences have gotten it right now. So thank you very much, and I would like to wish our audience a good evening, a good morning, and a good afternoon, wherever they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.